Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Brode from Deep Knowledge Investing. We work with hedge funds, registered investment advisors, family offices, and individuals like you to help you get better returns in the stock market. I'm here with our host, Rob Farian, the CEO and founder of Flying V Group, our digital marketing partner. Rob, how you doing this week?
Doing well. Happy New Year. I think this is the first time we're coming from the new year. So I know
It
it's
is.
halfway through the month already, which is crazy to say, but Happy New Year, Gary.
Yeah, to you as well. I took a couple of weeks off when I was traveling in Asia, and now I'm back home in Connecticut.
Great. Yeah, I know you were all over. It seemed like now we're on close enough time zone, East Coast, West Coast. That makes life a little bit easier for us, and we'll get things back in a groove for all of you listeners, watchers, followers. Appreciate your patience with us, Gary. You did tell me that, okay, if you take these 2 weeks or however long it was, you're going to come back refreshed and ready to go and fire. And so, is that the case?
Well, let's go through this week's five things and you can decide for yourself.
That sounds good. Lots to talk about this week. Lots has happened. Bitcoin ETFs. We're talking CPI, PPI, and at the end we have one additional five things, which I know is close to your heart. So
Oh, yeah.
we'll definitely spend some time with that as well. So
Perfect.
jumping into it right away. Point number one, as I'm sure many of you have heard, and if you haven't, I don't know where you've been. The SEC approves 11 Bitcoin ETFs.
Yeah, this is a huge moment for the Bitcoin community. It has been years in the making, and the company that carried the water for this one was Grayscale. They have been working, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, they have been working for years to try to get SEC approval to convert to an ETF. It stands for Exchange Traded Fund. And what that would do, and what it has done, is eliminate the discount to net asset value that this thing was trading at. And so, if you knew this was coming, you could make a lot of money from it. In the case of Deep Knowledge Investing, we were buying the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, GBTC, at about 14 and a half a year and a half ago, and at about 18 and change about 6 months ago. And that closed, earlier this week, somewhere around $37, $38. And at some point it traded a little over 40. So, it's somewhere between a double and a triple for us in a very short time frame. And part of that is Bitcoin has done well in anticipation of these approvals. And part of it is that the Grayscale Trust was trading at a discount to net asset value. So we were able to capture, basically, we got the return from Bitcoin plus an additional 30% along the way, and that worked out well. Once people realized that Grayscale was going to win their years long fight with the SEC, 10 others jumped in, including, big companies like BlackRock, um, Fidelity, they're in there as well. There's an ARK ETF. And these are all just vehicles for holding Bitcoin. Now, for those of you who are Bitcoin enthusiasts who really understand this stuff, the best thing that you can do is own Bitcoin and self custody. And, if you need it, I've written a guide to self custody, and I think it makes people nervous, and I understand it, but we've done it step by step. Literally, press this button, fill out this field, and we've made it easy. And it can be done, and it can be done without possessing a great deal of technical expertise. But for some people, they want to own it in an IRA account, or they want to have it in a brokerage account so they can get leverage on it. Or for some people, there are institutional restrictions or compliance restrictions. These approvals have now opened up Bitcoin investing to people who have traditional asset management vehicles. People who are using a wealth advisor, a registered investment advisor, or just a brokerage account, or pension funds. And so I think what we're going to see over time is a flow of money from the traditional asset management world and from pension funds who might allocate, 0.5% along the way, 1%. And that will all be money that will be flowing into Bitcoin. So we're positive on that over the long term. And one of the things we've been saying for a long time, and this will come up in my upcoming trip to El Salvador, we'll be talking about that soon, is Bitcoin is for everybody, right? It's not just for the 20-something-year-old crypto punks. Um, it is for everybody. It's for the 80-year-old grandmother who might not have great technical skills. It's for poor people in countries where their currency isn't stable and they want to save in something other than their own failing currencies. It's for investors like you and me, Rob, and for everybody listening to this. So, it's really easy for some of the Bitcoin maxis to say, oh, well, not your keys, not your coins. And that is true, but not everybody's capable of, owning this in separate accounts. And for some people, they needed a traditional vehicle. And this just opened the door for that.
No doubt. And yeah, I've read Gary your self custody piece, so that's a great piece for anybody looking for information about self custody versus exchanges, etc. A lot of good information in there, so definitely check that out. Let us know if you can't find it, and we can definitely get you a copy and send that through to you. Piggybacking on the Bitcoin ETF approvals, so if you're tracking this on a minute by minute, hour by hour basis, we had some issues. SEC basically delaying, then complaining about its own decision. We had some fake news drama, it seemed like. So, Gary, can you hash all that out for us?
Yeah. So, just as a starting point, the SEC is actually one of the few government agencies I respect. They in general do their job pretty well. However, on this particular issue, this was a monkey rodeo. It was absolutely one of the most incredible comedies of errors I've ever seen in my life. First of all, the SEC tweeted the day before they approved that they had already approved the 11 ETFs. And then they came out and they said, oh, we were hacked. At which point everybody started speculating, saying, okay, wait, were you hacked? Or did one of your interns just put this up and not realize, oh, I've got to wait a day?
It was quite the scene on X for a few
Yeah.
hours, or if not longer there.
Yeah, exactly. And it got even dumber because the SEC tweeted, the best place to get information about the SEC is the SEC website. They blamed us for believing their and my response to that, and I actually tweeted this back at them, is if you guys if your Twitter account is not a viable, valid way to get information, why do you have a Twitter account? Right.
Right.
If we can't trust that the SEC can secure their Twitter account, and by the way, they're responsible for securing people's investments and ensuring, like they warn people all the time about, locking down your accounts, whether it's the companies that they administer or investors. They didn't do that with their own account. And if they can't manage that, they look kind of silly here.
Right.
But on top of that, if we can't rely on their Twitter account, why do they have a Twitter account? Then don't have one. But at any rate, if they can't enable two-factor authentication, don't blame us for believing what's on your account, right?
Right.
But then the next day, it got even sillier because you had people tweeting that, hey, I just spoke with the CEO of one of the companies that, they've told us that Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, has told them that they're going to get approval that day. So
Right.
they're tweeting this out at, 11, 12, 1 o'clock on the day that we're getting the approval. And saying, and literally saying, but it's Gensler, so who knows? Like saying they told us they're going to approve it. We're telling you they told us they're going to approve it, but we really don't know what they're going to do. At which point that got denied. And then somebody found they had the approvals up on their website,
Right.
but it was a hidden page. And somebody found it. And I managed to grab this thing like hours early, downloaded it, printed it out, read it. By the time I was halfway through it, they'd already pulled it off the website. So they basically put their own documentation out and then withdrew it because like 3 times the news came out early.
Right.
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 But here's the dumbest part of all of this. And this is the thing where it makes me think some of the people at the SEC don't really understand what they're regulating. They then complained about their own decision. And Gary Gensler came out and he chose to say this right the same day they offer these approvals. He said, while we approved the listing and trading of certain spot Bitcoin ETP shares today, right, exchange traded products, we did not approve or endorse Bitcoin. Okay, well, Gary, I don't know what to tell you, but the only thing the SEC has jurisdiction over is approving the listing and trading of those exchange traded products, the exchange traded funds, the ETPs, the ETFs. That's all they have. That's all they have authority over. Bitcoin does not require, Bitcoin is permissionless. It does not require the permission of any government lackey, any government functionary, any government agency. Bitcoin, the US government could ban Bitcoin, and guess what happens? The network just keeps rolling.
Right.
Right. And if they think they're going to stop Americans from buying Bitcoin by making it illegal, right? I mean, they can lock us out of the network using US IP addresses. Hey, Rob, what's a VPN?
Yeah. Good luck.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I have a VPN, a virtual private network on my computers, my phones, my tablets. So I can pick up my phone right now and tell my phone I'm in the Philippines again,
Right.
or in Thailand, right? Or
Right.
in El Salvador, where I'm heading later. Like these are not restrictions that have any meaning, and it's not clear to me why he feels the need to say that they didn't approve Bitcoin. That Bitcoin doesn't require approval by anybody,
Right.
right?
If
And
the
the best line I saw, Elizabeth Warren came out complaining about the approvals as well, and one of my favorite Twitter followers, Peruvian Bull, uh, came out and told her she should call the manager.
yeah,
Like,
please, I want to speak to the manager of Bitcoin
right.
immediately.
Right. What 1-800? What do you right? What's leave a note in the comments. What's the 800 number for the Bitcoin help desk? Right?
Exactly.
Where's the somebody give me the email address of the Bitcoin manager. That's what we need.
Customer service.
Right, customer service. Yeah, exactly. And so put it in the comments here. I will get it to Senator Warren.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the SEC is listening too, if you need any help on social media processes, website versioning, staging, we can help you out with that too. But yeah, just a comedy of errors, like you mentioned, Gary, with this entire process. But
Yeah.
in the past, and exciting news moving forward, I think as a whole for Bitcoin.
It is. And you know what, Rob, I'll tell you, as much as this whole thing got silly and as much as the SEC really didn't look good on this one, I'm going to reiterate the point I made earlier. It is one of the few government agencies I respect. I have
Sure.
seen them bring some phenomenal lawyers to take action against people and companies who have defrauded people. I've seen them recover funds. I've seen them recover millions of dollars for people who have been defrauded. So, listen, if anyone from the SEC is listening, I've seen you guys do great work in the past. I've seen you recover money from people who were defrauded. And, this was not their finest hour, but the agency itself has a lot of good people working there.
No doubt. Moving on to point three, December Consumer Price Index came out. The CPI number is higher than expected and rising. That initial number came in at 3.4%, which was above the 3.2% expectation.
Yeah, so the story for the last year has really been disinflation. Everybody's very excited about disinflation. And, what disinflation is, it is a reduction in the rate of inflation. So for everybody who's excited about your high school calculus, it's a second derivative. It's a change in the rate of change. For the rest of you who were annoyed by high school calculus or just it was too long ago and you can't remember it, all that's saying is we still have inflation. We still have increasing prices, but prices are increasing more slowly than they did before. In the meantime, what we got last month was actually an increase in the rate of inflation. The CPI went from 3.2% to 3.4%. That might not sound like a big change, but the issue is people have been looking for that number to continue to fall. Excuse me. So it's a situation where we haven't seen the decrease in housing prices that many of us, myself included, expected. I've been wrong about that. And services prices continue to rise. And so, they're also last year, the CPI was helped a lot. It was lowered by a very strange, enormous one-time adjustment to healthcare costs, to health insurance. And that's now being reversed. So, there's a lot ticking against them right now, but I can tell you that if the CPI keeps rising, people's expectations that the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates in the next 2-3 months is not going to happen, right? They're going to hold on. And while I do think we're at the terminal rate, which is the fancy finance way of saying the Fed isn't going to raise rates again, if we end up with another round of Powell saying higher for longer, this will be the reason.
Great. Shifting gears, going from the CPI, PPI, producer price index, 1% higher, lower than expected, and falling is our term for the DKI five things, but came in 1% higher than a year ago, but down 0.1% versus prior month.
Yeah. So this now we're going to contradict everything we just said. And that's,
Right.
that listen,
I felt myself doing that, reading that
yeah,
that point.
exactly. But you know what? We're going to talk about the reasons, but this is part of following economics, right? You don't necessarily get everything indicating the same answer. Sometimes you have contradictory data, and we've had huge amounts of contradictory data for more than a year. I started writing about this in the fourth quarter of 2022, I think. So we've been writing about this for over a year now. Back in 2022 is when I was focused on this. And so the PPI is the producer price index, and the Fed will pay more attention to that than they will to the CPI. Um, First of all, coming in 1% higher than a year ago, that's within the range of what the Fed is looking for, right? They're trying to get these numbers down below 2%, or at least 2% or something close to that. So anything under 2% is considered a win for the Fed. More importantly, the PPI was actually down 0.1% versus last month. Now, 0.1%, is it a big deal? No, it's not. It's the smallest change that they'll measure, but it's actually the first indication we've gotten on deflation, actually lower prices. So let's talk about what's going on here, because I just gave you the whole thing saying, wait a minute, we've got higher prices. The CPI is up and increasing, right? It's the opposite of disinflation. And that can lead to higher for longer. Now I'm telling you, wait, the PPI is negative. We've had deflation here, and that can lead to the Fed cutting rates. And the reason for that is upstream versus downstream. So what we have is a consumer that's spending huge amounts of money and going into debt. And part of it's trying to make ends meet, and part of it is just wanting to spend and enjoy a high material quality of life. But the companies that make the products that people are buying are starting to get worried about a potential coming recession. And they're reining things in. And we just got a manufacturing number today that was horrendous. And so a lot of these companies are saying, you know what, we don't want to have so much exposure. We don't have so much inventory. And so we've got this weird situation where the people who are supplying the products are actually reducing supply right now and reducing investment right now. At the same time, the consumers are buying everything they can.
Interesting. Anything else on that point, Gary?
No, we're going to be seeing contradictory data for a while. In this case, the consistent data is the manufacturers and the producers are indicating recession. The consumers indicating we're going to spend until we have to declare bankruptcy.
Right, makes sense. And I know we've talked about that quite a bit over the last couple sessions, just with consumer spending habits. Shifting gears, point number 5, we're talking about Hertz Rental Car Company. This was a pretty big headline throughout the news. Definitely a lot of clickbait going on. So we set the record straight for us, Gary. Hertz is selling their Teslas and other EVs that they recently purchased.
Yeah. So, one of the things, and we've done programming on this before, EVs are not the environmental solution that people think they are. Just as a starting point, the lithium mining is hugely toxic to the environment. And people talk about them being zero emission vehicles. This is 100% not true, right? They're zero emission at the tailpipe, but you still need the grid to fuel your car. Now people will argue, yeah, but better to have centralized, some sort of plant than have each car burning fuel. Okay, that's a reasonable point. But again, you really need to look at the environmental cost of mining that lithium and other rare earth elements. At any rate, the government has been trying to push this as a solution. The government has been telling people, we want everybody driving EVs. California is trying to outlaw internal combustion vehicles. There are subsidies. Like, for everyone listening to this, tell me it doesn't bother you that, we were subsidizing people, I think, $9,000 to buy a $90,000 Tesla, right? And I'm going to say the obvious thing here, right? If you can afford a $90,000 car, I don't want to pay for it.
Yep.
Right? The taxpayer should not be paying for it. If you're listening to this, you should not be buying cars for other people. unless you want to, or unless you're Oprah, I guess.
Yeah,
But
do that on your own dime.
right, exactly. Yeah, she didn't tax people for that. So they've been trying to make it seem like these EVs are terrific and people want them. And Hertz had all this fanfare. We're buying tens of thousands of EVs, and we're green and people are going to want this and we're going to be able to charge them. Or yeah, it was a disaster. First of all, people on vacation, they don't know where to charge the vehicle. Second, people on vacation, they're not familiar with an EV, and they drive differently than an internal combustion vehicle. And so people are trying to learn how to drive a new car that drives differently on unfamiliar roads, and desperately looking for places to charge their cars in unfamiliar territory. You've got stories about people missing their flights because their car ran out of battery power. I mean, it just, the whole thing didn't work. And then unsurprisingly, the operating costs were higher than they expected, right? Who
Right.
who could have imagined, right? Have a whole different class of cars and you have higher operating expenses. At any rate, Hertz decided to throw in the towel, and they are selling 1/3 of their EVs, 20,000 vehicles, and then they're going to take the proceeds of that and buy regular internal combustion cars. So
Uh,
they're
so what
reversing.
you're saying is people on vacation don't want to waste 45 minutes to an hour waiting for their EV to charge for them to get wherever they want to go on vacation.
I actually think people would have been okay with 45 minutes. The problem is that they were desperately looking for a place, and then
Right.
they'd find it and it would take them 4 or 5 hours because, they weren't the super fast chargers.
Right. Exactly. Interesting. All right. Final point, bonus point for today. I'm sure you've been congratulated, but let me be the first DKI Five Things host to congratulate you. Michigan Wolverines, national champions in football. And I'll let you take it away from here because I'm sure you've got quite a bit to say. And I know you're very proud of your alma mater.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. I was actually in the Rose Bowl in '97 when that team won the national championship. This team was phenomenal to watch. And there was some valid criticism early on because they played a very easy schedule early. Their schedule is back and loaded. But in
Hmm.
the last few weeks of the season, they beat Penn State by multiple scores. Beat a number 2 ranked at the time Ohio State team, crushed Iowa by 4 scores in the Big Ten championship game, and made the top defense in the country look bad. Held on against Alabama, a traditional power, one of the greatest teams of the last 20 years,
No doubt.
and then beat Washington senseless in the national championship game. I mean, it was tight into the fourth quarter, but when push came to shove, Michigan shoved them out of the way, won by 3 touchdowns, and that was phenomenal. The thing that I think was really interesting is we've seen this trend in college football lately to make the game more like the pros. And I
Hmm.
understand it, right? We've had the transfer portal that allows players to switch teams, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's basically meant that every offseason you have free agency,
Right.
and dozens of players are switching teams. On top of that, with NIL, the name and image licensing, players are getting paid, and some of them
Right.
are getting paid millions of
Yep.
dollars. There are college programs that are competing with the NFL saying, "Hey, don't go to the NFL and get paid, a few $1 million. We'll pay you a few $1 million to stay here." Right?
Yeah, it's definitely causing a huge shift across the board, right? With how you run your teams. Even Michigan's point when Harbaugh, obviously, he's up in the air where he's going to coach. Sounds like he's going to
Yeah.
move on. Saw a bunch of guys from Michigan right after the championship enter that portal to find, all right, where's my next spot, knowing that the coach that brought me here might not know or might no longer be here.
You know what? It wasn't the portal. Michigan only lost a few players to the portal. It was the NFL draft. A lot of
Mm,
guys declared, but you know what? This is the interesting thing to me. Um, Michigan had a lot of guys last year who were in their, third, fourth, fifth year with the program, and who could have gone to the NFL, and they didn't. They came back. Guys
right,
like Zach Zinter and Blake Corum. They're the entire offensive line, they could have all gone to the NFL. Roman Wilson could have, the great wide receiver. I mean, Michigan had a ton of players who came back for fourth or fifth, or some of them even had the COVID sixth year to come back. And they passed on the NFL, and they were crystal clear when they did it. They said, "We are coming back to win the national championship." And that's remarkable to me for 2 reasons. One is to call your shot, a year early and say, next year we're going to do this, and to go 15-0 and fulfill that promise, those guarantees that they had made, to give the what they had done meaning, I think is incredible. But beyond that, who does that? Who stays in college for another year instead of going pro when they would have been drafted by the NFL? And that to me is remarkable. And this Michigan team had such an incredible team first spirit. Remember the way they get paid now, it's not the teams. The University of Michigan isn't allowed to pay the players, right? It's NIL, name and image licensing. And that means drawing more attention to yourself, having a bigger social media following. That gets you paid more. But these
Right.
guys, instead of drawing attention to themselves, go watch an interview with any Michigan player. And you ask the running backs why they had a good day, and they're like, the line blocked great, and this guy and this guy and this guy. The quarterback will talk about the defense. Everybody
Mhm.
mentions the coaches. You ask the cornerbacks, why'd you have such a good day? The line put pressure on the quarterback. They all look to each other. They all deflect attention to their teammates who maybe get less attention. It was one of the most incredible esprit de corps, right? This sense of team spirit
Yep.
that I've seen in the college game in decades. It really was a remarkable team.
Yeah, it was great. I think it speaks volumes to what Harbaugh can do, getting everybody moving in the right direction. So definitely easily the best team of the season. So good to see them finish off that perfect year. Gary, before we go, if you're listening to this, you're going to be on a few different Twitter spaces. I know you're speaking in-person event. Did you want to highlight any of those real quick? If anyone's still here with us at the tail end, I know you got a couple exciting opportunities coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time, I'm doing a Twitter space with Tracy. She's at Shy Girl, CHIGIRL, and Jack Farley, who's a phenomenal finance journalist and podcaster. So the three of us are going to be talking on Twitter at 11 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, Wednesday. And then on Thursday, there are two events. One is the New York Alternative Investment Roundtable. I'll be speaking there that evening in New York. They have, I don't know, hundreds of people have registered, I believe. And we'll be talking about the ebook that we wrote, Counterintuitive Inflation, talking about how Federal Reserve rate hikes can actually cause more inflation, talking about the economy. And then separately from that, Michael Gayed, who on Twitter is Lead Lag Report, he has put together an unbelievable group of
Yeah,
speakers tomorrow.
it's an impressive list.
It is an all-day event focused on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It's sponsored by Hashdex. I think he has 28 speakers. Hashdex is ensuring everybody's actually getting paid. And Gayed has put together a group of 24 plus of the best Bitcoin and cryptocurrency analysts and people on Twitter. And I'm on with him and a couple other people starting at 1:30, I think, 1:30 Eastern time on Thursday. And please feel free to, listen in when I'm on. I'll be on from like 1:30 to 2 or 2:30. But check out Gayed's schedule. It is unbelievable. He really has a phenomenal lineup of people who will be taking part in that. It's incredible.
Yeah, really, really exciting stuff, and good for you, Gary. I'm excited to see you speak with such a great group. So that's going to wrap for this week. As always, head to our website, deepknowledgeinvesting.com. Click the subscribe now button at the top right if you want to sign up for a free subscription. Obviously, access to paid subscriptions as well for premium content that Gary's producing. We'll be back to a normal schedule from here on out, assuming Gary doesn't kick me out as the host. I think seat's getting a little warm, but definitely not complacent in any way. So, Gary, as always, thank you again for a great segment, a great 5 things or 6 things this week with Michigan, and look forward to speaking with you next week.
Hey, Rob, your seat isn't warm. The only guy I would replace you with is Harbaugh.
I'm in okay company. Then I'll take that. Not a
Yeah,
problem at all.
perfect. Exactly. All right, everyone. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. And we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.